go. We are in April, Jake, and as people fill in, we've got another exciting PKI Solutions webinar for you. Welcome to April. I think Jake and I, we're on a bit of a run now, I think, doing these webinars again, aren't we?
Yeah, this has been several this year already. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that we're back together again. So if this is your first time joining a PKI Solutions webinar, welcome. If you have been here before, welcome back. I was just talking to Jake before we got started. I think we have definitely found topics that are interesting to everyone. This is our second highest registration webinar that we had to date. Our last one we did about the changes coming to Microsoft ADCS late last year. I think that one was over 600 registrants. I think today we're pushing over 400. I think there's a lot of interest in Microsoft and PKI compared to what else is happening out there. So I'm glad we are on to something that's very interesting to you all. So thanks for joining us. As usual today, I'm one of your co-presenters. I'm Mark Cooper. I'm the founder and CEO of PKI Solutions. And joining me today is Jake. Jake, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, thank you. I'm Jake Graham-Leonard. I'm the second to Mark number one. So, I had honestly thought this would be our first. I thought this would win because when I'm talking to clients, which I do every single day, I'm hearing automation and ACME constantly. It's supplanted everything. So I really thought today would be a big day. It is a big day, and I'm happy all the people that have joined us. But yeah, I've been with the company now for a long time and worked with Mark, and I still talk to clients almost every single day. And this is a very, very hot topic right now.
Yeah. And just looking at the chat, we have people from Texas, Switzerland, Lagos, from Uruguay, from Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Spain, Portugal. So definitely a global topic here. So welcome, everyone. Let's give you a little bit of framework about what we're going to talk about today. And if you have questions as we go through, I'd love to have you post those in the chat. We'll get those over to the Q&A and address them as we can as we go through. So we're going to talk a little bit about the hot topic du jour, the validity times. Definitely something that on a lot of people's minds. Obviously, kind of ties back to the automation side of things, which is where ACME and other types of protocols come in. We'll talk about what you kind of have available, maybe in your existing tool set, as well as some of the other tools that are out there. And we've got a small update to share with you on the Microsoft side as well. And then any questions that we don't get a chance to address as we go through, we'll have a little session at the end. And as always, if there's a question that you post that we don't get to, we do try our best to follow up with you afterwards.
Yep.
So with that, let's jump in. Jake, you're talking to customers every day, as you say. How often are they asking about validity, and what are you kind of framing those conversations with them about?
But what I'm hearing almost every day. So if I got $1 for every time I heard the word automation, I would retire. So it's everywhere, and I think it's being driven obviously a lot by this most recent reduction. When we fell down to 200 days back on March 15th of this year, and then we'll continue to stair step down. But I feel like in recent times it was probably a 50-50 between post quantum and automation, and post that March 15th date, it's like people have finally kind of woken up to it, like, hey, the time is now, like we need to do something. So it's huge. I'm hearing it a lot.
And I think that the really interesting thing for us is, we work with enterprise customers that are typically using PKI internally for corporate purposes, whether it's smart cards and VPN and Wi-Fi authentication, data encryption, you name it. A lot of these validity time things are really driven from the public internet, meaning coming from the CAB forum for the public internet-facing SSL TLS certificates. But those questions bleed over into a little bit of sky is falling, right? Because a lot of the messaging out there is, oh my gosh, you can't do certificates longer than 47 days soon. I think the number one thing that we get to tell customers is relax. This doesn't affect your internal PKI stuff, right? That's still a pretty common concern.
Very, very common. And even to the point where I guess it's been a couple of webinars ago, we actually kind of broke out kind of the difference, what the difference maker is, and essentially, an easy rule of thumb is our browsers. Our browsers are what are really being impacted here with this shortening. So they're the ones that are going to have to follow rules from the third-party CAs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the interesting thing is when you kind of break the issue down, this is not a cryptography problem. This isn't like RSA is suddenly broken. This is not even a post-quantum thing. This is not an ECC thing. This is frankly the public PKIs being bad at what they're supposed to do. And I don't mean to throw anyone under the bus here, but a lot of this is being driven because there's repeated issues of lack of integrity when it comes to issuing certificates or having proper validations and issuance. So one way of controlling that is by having shorter and shorter certificates. And what the CAB forum and the browsers and the operating systems, everyone that runs these root programs has found out they're very powerless when it comes to, hey, if there is a fraudulent certificate, no one can force a CA to revoke that certificate. So Google can stand up and say, we know this thing's fraudulent, revoke it. And if the CA doesn't do it and doesn't follow the rules, Google's powerless. So one way of affecting this is great. We'll change the standards so that certificate validity periods get shorter and shorter. So if something is issued, the ability for that to be used or affect the environment is smaller and smaller. And that's what these lifetimes are, because it's not like RSA is suddenly going to be broken in 47 days come next year. That's not what this is about. This is how do we contain this issue? So when you start talking to customers and we explain the difference between the enterprise PKI perspective versus public PKI perspective, do they then start thinking about, well, should I follow some of those practices in-house? Because we did that for a little while. We don't generally recommend internal certificates for more than 2 years, for instance. And that was kind of not quite lockstep, but kind of followed some of those things. Do they still look at this and say, well, I guess I should do 47 anyway, even though I'm not forced to do it?
I am seeing some, and oddly enough, the results I just saw a chat basically saying the same. So when we're dealing with our clients and our pragmatic approach is we try to understand what are we really trying to do. So comparing the third-party CAs and the internal PKI really is apples and oranges. And we do have certificates that we want to shorten the duration. And I think too often in the past, it was kind of a very broad statement. We'll issue a certificate valid for a year or 2 years. Well, now, if it's a certificate on a device that is out in the world a bit more, let's shorten it up. But if it's something that's relatively secure, and especially if we are protecting that key in any way, probably not, as big an urgent need to shrink that validity period down so low.
And these validity periods, the old problem, new issue, right? It's the validity periods have been shrinking over time. We see the evolution of the CAB standards around no client EKUs, right? We just had our webinar because a lot of people are looking at X9 trying to solve this whole client EKU thing, right? So it's just kind of increasing way of controlling the risks that are in the public space. I see Reba commented about vendors trying to sell PKI products without CRLs because they're short-lived and they're internal. I don't know if I would want even a 47-day certificate. Like if I have a laptop that's been stolen and it's going to be able to access my VPN for the next 47 days that I can't revoke it, that's still a big, massive hole. A non-revocable certificate short of I've got a microservice that's going to be up and running for 5 minutes and is going to shut down and isn't going to be around. Okay, I get those without CRLs, but
Right.
unless it's an ephemeral kind of system, revocation is an important part of the PKI. Otherwise, you're just kind of tossing identities out there and hoping for the best, regardless of how long they're valid for.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, trust. I did a presentation yesterday to one of our clients, and pretty broad audience, and that's why I always keep coming back to is trust. And
Yeah.
47 days is a long time to trust, or for that level of trust.
Exactly. So, over this kind of old problem, new attestation sort of thing, before it wasn't difficult to get things like a 10-year wildcard certificate. Now, this is, I don't really want to do PKI. I don't really care about, high security. I don't want to have to worry about this thing. Or I often joke a lot of times when we work with government agencies, a lot of times, like, can I get a certificate that's valid until after I retire? That's often the benchmark, right? So a lot of these 10-year certs were, hey, I just wanted to go away.
Yep.
I would typically say when you're in that place of, hey, how do I make sure I don't ever have to do this again? You're probably not really trying to improve security. You're probably just trying to get the product to work.
Right.
So we've been on this slow march from 10 years down to 47 days. And we've got kind of this phased approach over the next couple of years, right, Jake?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll just, keep going down. I did want to make just real quick, a comment you'd mentioned, around some of the CAP forum and the client auth in the certificates. One of the first times, at least I remember, where they kind of acquiesced a little, so they said, oh, it's going to stop. And then they came out like, you know what, we're going to give it a little bit more time. I don't know if it was the amount of pushback or who pushed back. That's one of the first times I've seen them kind of come back and say, we'll give you a little more time.
Yeah. And we've been seeing that in a few places. The CAB forum, they've got certain objectives, but there's also larger ramifications. And frankly, they're setting standards, but at the same time, if their largest customers can't adapt to certain things, or even browsers can't enforce certain things, right? It's one thing to say, hey, we have a rule, but we can't move the bits and pieces or the enforcement or the something in time to affect that, then things are going to change. I think the other thing you brought up is we've been seeing a lot of parsing of these timelines where a lot of those shall versus must get interpreted in interesting ways, where we'll see some CAs start having gentle enforcement and others will have a hard enforcement or a more graceful period, because they're parsing that semantic. And it doesn't say must, it says shall or should. So great, I'm not going to do it, but the next guy over will, right? So I'm sure we'll find a lot of that kind of slop across this.
Yeah, we had a client essentially take a brief outage because of it, because their public CA took it as a must and just shut it down, where other public CAs weren't at the time. And the language, like you said, it didn't say must. It's you're getting ready for it, but they clamped it down hard right now, and it caused problems. They couldn't issue public search for a little while.
Yeah. I think that the other thing that comes up a lot when we talk about these validity periods is remember, these dates are the issuance dates where the new rules take effect. So when we start thinking about 47-day certificates, these are really only for certificates issued after March 15th, 2029. You can still get a 100-day certificate on March 14th. Right. And then even now, the March 15th, 2026, which was the last benchmark that we passed that moved it to 200 days, your 398-day cert that you had issued prior to that is still valid. So
absolutely,
these dates don't suddenly invalidate everything that happens before. So there is that kind of stair-stepping approach. So if we're on this slow eventual march to 47 days, again, primarily in the public PKI space, but most of our customers, the PKI people, are often the ones that have some type of subject matter expertise or are part of the technical community that are interfacing with the public CA certificate requests, or some of them are using CLM products. So it kind of flows through the same group. So a lot of times they're tasked with solve this problem. It may be the business unit that has that appliance and is getting a certificate, but the PKI team, the ones that we're working with, are left to find solutions of how are we going to actually support 47 days.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that brings us to automation, right? If organizations dealt with 3-year certificates before, not too difficult unless you're at scale, hundreds or thousands become unwieldy. I think just about any organization, you could have 10 servers and 47 days is going to be a challenge, right? So this is,
absolutely,
you have to look at things.
Yeah, it's going to be, as we move forward, and what we're seeing, I was looking at that when I put that graphic together, back to the 2011 of, how many of us on the call remember that, because, now what we're seeing, and there's so many more certificates out there now, and there's so much more interweaved in everything we do. So we need to take care of them more often, and they're even more important now. So with this, what I'm hearing, people are really taking notice of, we want to automate it so it doesn't slip, so it doesn't expire. So, so the operational side as well as the security side.
Yeah, and automation really is the only choice here. And internally, the corporate PKIs, we've been kind of very lucky, especially with things like Microsoft, PKI, ADCS. We've had things like auto enrollment. There are a number of protocols that are a little more universal. As much as we talk or customers ask about ACME, there have been other protocols in the past designed to be kind of multi-platform, not vendor specific, things like SCEP, the simple certificate enrollment protocol. Microsoft calls it NDES, Network Device Enrollment Service, right? So these have been around for 20 plus years and have been what Cisco and others have kind of brought to their devices. Intune still has, integrations through there. So it is still a very common way that you can kind of do automation, but ACME is this kind of newer generational thing that was really kind of driven on the internet facing space of automation. But ACME is just another one of these enrollment protocols that are out there. So what do customers often ask about? Do they know what ACME already is, or do they come to you and say, hey, I need a solution, and we say, well, what about ACME?
Yeah, a little bit of both. It's to the point where it's kind of reminded me back in the early days of the cloud, back where the word cloud could mean a lot of different things, and so I'm seeing ACME at times kind of almost interchanged with automation, and maybe not knowing all the different steps behind it, and what we can do with it. So they've almost been coming like almost in lockstep. So people are asking more about ACME, or people had experience with it with Let's Encrypt or something like that. But I will say, I agree 100%. A lot of the appliances and whatnot out there that supported SCEP, I'm starting to see more of them support ACME. It's definitely a slow rollout on that space, but I'm seeing it happen. So it will, appliances are starting to support it.
Exactly. It's definitely a more modern approach. NDIS and SCEP kind of have some dependencies around the one-time passwords, and it's kind of unwieldy. And over the years, we've seen kludgy things like back in the day. I remember the Mobile Iron and AirWatch would do things like scraping the web page of NDIS to get a password, or just say don't do a password at all. ACME is definitely a more robust thing. And I think what you're kind of finding is there's a lot of systems that still support SCEP but don't support ACME.
For sure.
And as much as people say, well, what about ADCS and what about ACME? I go, well, you don't need it internally, so don't worry about from your organization, corporate IT side, but on your public side, does your system that you want to automate even support it? I think we're now in that era where we're seeing more and more of these appliances and web hosting providers and web services supporting ACME. So they're kind of catching up. It hasn't been for a lack of a protocol. So the big thing is, okay, if I've got this newer protocol, historically it's been, what can I enroll with it? If I have a host and a system that can support ACME, does my CA support it? Again, where we're typically seeing ACME deployed is on the public internet. And unfortunately, most of the public CAs have done it. I think the interesting thing now is, what about ACME and ADCS? So internally in that corporate environment, their SCEP, it's still pretty universal. It has its scalability issues. But now that there's more of these appliances, more of these systems available supporting ACME, now the question is, what about ADCS? So when customers say, great, I've got all these things that can do ACME. I know I don't have to do 47 days if I'm using ACME externally. Can I do it internally? Like, what are my options with ADCS?
Right. Yeah. And what we're seeing is definitely see a lot more non-domain aware devices in environments now, whether it be the Nix, Unix, Linux, container, you name it. We're seeing a lot more of that now. And what similar to some of the big, I call them the big three of the CLMs, they are facilitating a pass through, kind of like they could do virtual SCEP as well, if you didn't want to stand up an Endev server, but they're also facilitating ACME back to ADCS as well. So, but sometimes those, there's it's a high threshold, a high buy-in to get, one of those big three CLMs in-house.
And there's been a host of different providers that have just an ACME plugin. It's one where if there was a desire to use ACME with ADCS, you could do it. It was just a third-party plugin, just like you would go buy a CLM product. Okay, I want to do ACME. Now that CLM products kind of front end that, just like a lot of them kind of front end SCEP as well. So there's a route that you can go that way. And usually when we talk about that, it's okay, well, going out buying a third-party product, this financially doesn't matter because I've got other enrollment options internally. So the conversation inevitably kind of goes back to, I guess I'm okay with SCEP after all, because it's not worth going and buying something else. So there have been over the years ways of using third-party products to get ACME support internally. Now, outside of ACME, I mean, what are kind of the automation options that customers can do today with ADCS?
Well, like you said, with I guess just one last thing on the ACME side, that there have popped up and been several open source things, but again, not always what we want to put in our production environments, but they are out there, and there's this allowing clients to use their ADCS to issue those certificates. But what I'm also hearing a lot of times is things that are native that are there, like auto enrollment and auto renew. We're not always utilizing all the tools that are that we have. So auto renew on a certificate template to you may have to do your certificate one time with your custom values, and then it'll all renew and keep those settings, and then you could even go in to IIS and have it rebind itself. So
it's funny that feature has been there for so long, and it's one of the most overlooked capabilities, because most people just assume, I have to manually touch every SSL certificate that's out there. And I think it was 2012, 2016. It must have been 2012 that
I think so. Yeah, when IS-10 first came out is when I believe it hit. So
it's been there for quite a while. A quick update from our polls here. One of them was, how does ACME fit into your internal PKI strategy? The biggest response said evaluating how it would fit. And only 17% of people say they've already integrated it internally. So a good number that are planning it or evaluating it. And then when it comes to how familiar are you to ACME, the two leading answers are yes for internal and public CAs. The other one is no, but we're evaluating it. So definitely a big split across the board of those things. So back to the automation side. We talked about ACME. You don't want to buy a third party. You still want to do something internally. Our options are what? We've got some things in IIS that we can use auto enrollment with the rebind. That's
we can leverage auto enroll, and there's some additional kind of tweaks out there that depending on the type of certificate that we need to issue, there's some other things we can do, some automation, some scripting and whatnot, like on strong certificate mapping, and it all depends on what we need that certificate to do for us and what we want to, or how we want to issue it. So there's a lot of those, and I mentioned the certificate lifecycle manager, which we already kind of touched on, that they can both help with the automation via API integration type things, as well as facilitate ACME or a SCEP, a virtual instance, if someone doesn't want to do it. And then there's open source that is out there, and even if for nothing else, anyone who's interested in learning more about it, it's a good way to read and kind of see how they build it, and it kind of gives you a basic framework. Really, all we're doing is taking this new protocol and turning it into something that our ADCS is going to understand and use to request that certificate. So that's that last little bridge or gap that we have right now to fully leverage our ADCS with ACME.
Exactly, and I think I would probably also throw out like a lot of the MDM tools, like
exactly,
in Jamf, like they have some integrations, and behind the scenes, most of them are doing SCEP or something else, right? But they're kind of removing that barrier of where you have to configure each device in automation, where they're kind of doing that device management kind of an approach that goes through there. Now I've kind of buried the lead here a little bit, but as we get to the summary, I've had an interesting conversation with Microsoft, and they're not quite ready to make it official, but in the conversations with them, I can tell you, with the team that has recently brought things like the CRL partitioning, the work that they've started working on ADCS, not only are we about to see the post-quantum capabilities, I recently posted about that. I think we're expecting that here in May. The post-quantum integration into ADCS is actually already in the product, but the visibility is disabled. I'm awaiting my magic key so that Jake and I can start playing with it. They mentioned that ACME is on their roadmap as well. So this challenge of, hey, how do we move away from an auto-enrollment only world, or dealing with a much older SCEP protocol that's Cisco created many years ago, will eliminate the barrier of having to go buy a third-party tool like a CLM or using one of these third-party integrations. They're not committing anything to me, but they did say that part of their planning for 26 and 27, that ACME, they've heard from you loud and clear that this is an important thing to them. So I would expect to see that coming soon. They know that this is an important thing to the enterprise customers, and just like we've been really reporting since that team's been put back together, I'll say all of my predictions at least have come true so far around supporting post-quantum. I know we've had our fair share of naysayers out there, but every single one of those things has come true as well. So the other thing I'll say is I know that Microsoft's also in the process of working to start putting together some customer feedback forums as well. Another great sign as well. So take it as you will, but just know that this ACME thing, you're not going to be left on your own for much longer to solve this. So pivoting back to what we talked about today, a lot of these lifetime things that are driving the ACME conversations are really about the public PKI side of things and kind of bad behaviors that are out there. But it is changing how organizations think about automation for their internal PKI. So ACME is kind of a natural part of that. I even saw a comment earlier. There are other protocols as well that people don't talk about as much. There's EST. So there certainly are other types of protocols that are out there. So it's not like ACME is the only saving thing that is possible out there. There are many different ways of approaching this, and a lot of organizations are just trying to find ways of addressing that. Jake, what else would you want to add to our summary today?
Basically, like you said, there are other options that, but like anything in our industry, ever so often, everyone gets behind a certain thing and pushes. And I feel like that's, and whether it was their exposure with ACME, with Let's Encrypt and if it was simple with that, but I feel like it's been talked about enough, and like I said, I think Microsoft is listening, right? It's not falling on deaf ears any longer. So I think that's really good, and there are ways to accomplish it now. Maybe not best for a production environment, but at least to show it. But ADCS is still there and can handle the load. We have some other clients do it right now using their CLM. It works great. So it's a great way to kind of stretch your legs on your existing ADCS to the point where we have some clients now. We're standing up new CAs dedicated for just that.
Yep.
So it's coming and it works great.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to do before everyone goes is there's a poll near and dear to Jake and I. I'm going to go ahead and launch that right now. If you've been joining our webinar series for a number of years, you'll know that back in 2020, we did a stint for about a year and a half of what we called office hours, which were no slides, talking heads, just kind of geeking out on PKI. Chance to kind of stump the chumps if you want. We'll kind of come in talking about what's going on in the space. Obviously, there's more topical conversations like we had today around ACME and other challenges. But if you attended those in the past and you enjoyed those and you'd like to see us come back, look at that. We already have one responder, so 100% yes. So with the one response, we'll just take that 100% as interested. Probably some of you haven't even been around attending our webinars long enough to know about that. So we do have a few I don't knows, but that's a good thing as well. So we are working on updating our content here. In fact, we're in the process of planning a move to a new office here shortly, and we're looking at setting up a media room that we can do these on a regular basis as well. So we will be back next month in May with a new exciting webinar topic. I don't necessarily know if we'll be ready to do, oh, look at that, we're already up to 55 yeses, Jake. So I think we have a good validation of that. We'll see how quickly we can get those back up and going. We'll see if we still call them office hours or not. But we appreciate everyone coming. Definitely these Microsoft topics are near and dear. So as always, we'll have this published up to our YouTube page shortly. So if you want to share this with others, we'll have that available. Jake, any parting words for everybody?
No, I appreciate everyone attending. And what we've been trying to do is be a little bit more dynamic. I'm trying to bring in what I'm hearing the most often. So that's kind of what we've kind of switched to. And Mark's been great to let me bring in whatever I'm hearing. So appreciate everyone joining.
Well, if next month we're talking about why there's 1 ounce less of Red Bull in the Red Bull cans, then you'll know where those topics are coming from. But we'll see everybody in May. Thanks again. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you all.